Okay. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Parishthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Namine. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Parishthaya Bhutale Srimate Radhanath Swamini Namine. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Vivishesha Shunwadi Paschatya Deshitarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So thank you all very much for joining. I'm really sorry last week I had to we could not do it. So so I regret. It was just a last minute thing. Actually, I realized that if I had little bit pushed, then we could have had it on Tuesday, but just that I got little bit tempted to attend the um, the function, the so therefore, and it was like a very grand function with all that palki and it was like very tempting for me. So I sort of really did not try to fix the internet issue. I could have tried to fix it and we could have still had, but somehow I'm really sorry. So today, henceforward, we will try not to cancel, or if not, reschedule it and definitely do it on some other day. Worst case. Anyway, so thank you all very much for joining today's discussion. So we have been discussing from the third verse of Manasiksha, and so this verse talks about if one wants to achieve uh, love for Krishna, Radha and Krishna in Vrindavan, uh, with the mood, especially with the mood with which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to give, then is it possible to do it um, mm, uh, by following any other sampradaya, by taking diksha or siksha in any other sampradaya? So this is the theme that this verse covers. So we'll chant the verse and then I will do a quick recap of what we saw last time. So we'll chant the verse. Yadi cheravasam vrajabhuvi saragam pratijano युवद्वन्द्वं तच्चेत् परिचरितुमारादभिलषे स्वरूपं श्रीरूपं सगणम् इह तस्याग्रजमपि स्फुटं प्रेम्णा नित्यं स्मरनमतदात्वं शृणु mana. So this verse says, Shrunu mana, oh my dear mind, please hear. Uh, if you desire, yadi tvam ichchehe pratijanu, life after life, if you desire, vrajabhuvi avasam, if you desire to reside in the land of Vraja, saragam, with loving attachment. And what would you do while staying there? He says, tad yuvadvandvam chet paricharitum abhilashehe. And if you desire to serve paricharya or intimate service to Radha and Krishna, Yuvadvandvam, Arad, while staying close to them, if life after life, if you wish to do this with great attachment, then there is only one way of doing it. Swarupam, Shri Rupam, Saganam iha tasyagrajamapi sputam premna nityam smara nama tadatvam shrunumana. So he says that then tada, in that case, if you wish to stay in Vrindavan and worship Radha and Krishna with great love and affection, then you have to clearly remember and offer obeisances to Swarup Damodar Goswami, Rupa Goswami, Sanatan Goswami and their associates. Basically what it means is you have to approach, or you have to worship Radha and Krishna through the teachings of the six Goswamis. So if you don't accept the teachings of the six Goswamis, without that, if you try to approach the subject matter, you cannot. That is the essential teaching. But let's see what the acharyas exactly say. So we were discussing last 2-3 weeks, we have been discussing from Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's explanation of this particular verse. So, I will do a quick recap of what we saw last time. So, this verse addresses whether or not it is possible for someone to attain residence in Vrindavan with spontaneous love, Ragatmika Bhakti, if one accepts initiation Diksha and instruction Shiksha from any of the Vaishnava schools. Is it possible or not? This is the point that is discussed by Raghunath Das Goswami in this particular verse. So basically, Bhaktivinoda Thakur's commentary, more or less the almost 80% of the commentary that we have been discussing, discusses about this word Saragam. What is this Saragam? So he is describing Ragatmika Bhakti, or the means to attain that Ragatmika Bhakti, that is Raganuga Bhakti. So we had an elaborate discussion about this last few weeks. So I'll do a quick recap of that. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, let us try to understand what actually Bhaktivinoda Thakur or Raghunath Das Goswami says when he says Saragam. Yadiche Ravasam Vrajabhuvi Saragam Pratijanot. What is the meaning of Saragam? The meaning of the word Raga. So he says that the practice and perfection of pure bhakti is categorized into three states: sadhana bhakti, bhava bhakti, and prema bhakti. And he starts quoting from Srila Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu. He says, the progress is mentioned as Adau Shraddha Tata Sadhu Sango Ata Bhajana Kriya Tato Anartha Nivrittisya Tato Nishta Ruchis Tataha Atasaktis Tato Bhavas Tata Premabhyudanchati Sadhakanam Ayam Premnaha Pradurbhave Bhavet Kramaha. So he says, starting from Shraddha, Sadhu Sangha, Bhajana Kriya, Anartha Nivritti, Nishta, Ruchi, Asakti, Bhava, and Prema. So in that, Sadhana Bhakti starts with Shraddha and ends with Asakti. And then comes Bhava Bhakti, and then comes Prema Bhakti. Okay, so there are three types of Bhakti: Sadhana, Bhava, and Prema. This we saw. Okay, so and further, Sadhana Bhakti we saw is divided into two categories: Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti and Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. And we saw that that there is Sadhana Bhakti is divided into two: Vaidhi and Raganuga. Vaidhi means regulated devotional service in practice, and Raganuga means spontaneous devotional service in practice. So both are therefore Sadhana Bhakti only. Further, there is Bhava and Prema, and we saw this example of two trains, one heading towards Pune and another heading towards Nasik. So both the trains may start from CST, but till Kalyan, they have the same route. And from Kalyan, there are two routes which split. One route goes towards Karjat and eventually reaches Pune, and another route goes towards Kasara and eventually reaches Nashik. So similarly, we saw that even though there are two kinds of sadhana bhakti, one is Vaidhi sadhana bhakti and Raganuga sadhana bhakti, but still till Nishta. So we saw that the station Kalyan is something like Nishta. So till Nishta, literally the practice is same. One has to practice Vaidhi sadhana bhakti only. And after Nishta, it is possible that some devotees who have properly practiced their Vaidhi sadhana bhakti following the teachings of our Gaudiya Vaishnava Acharyas, they may get this greed to follow in the footsteps of the Vrajavasis of Vrindavan. So they will take to the path of Raganuga Bhakti, and they will perfect Raganuga Bhakti and reach Raganuga Bhava and Raganuga Prema, and eventually go back to Goloka Vrindavan. Or if someone has not strictly followed their practice of Vaidhi sadhana bhakti according to the teachings of our Gaudiya Vaishnava Acharyas, they have little bit tried here and there, taken some inspiration from Sri Vaishnavas, or they might have taken some inspiration from Madhva Vaishnavas and so on. So that like that, if they do some mixed thing, or if they don't, if their practice is very generic and not specifically under the guidance of our Acharya's books, then it is quite possible that even post Nishta, they may not get this inspiration to um, mm, uh, follow after the footsteps of the Vrajavasis. So in that case, they will continue with Vaidhi only, and eventually they may attain Vaikunta. That is possible. So this we saw. But nevertheless, till Nishta, there is everyone practices Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti only. This we discussed. And then he quotes from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the definition of Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. Yatra raga anavaptatvat pravrittir upajayate shasanayana shastrasya sa Vaidhi Bhakti ruchyate. So here he says where actions of bhakti arise not from the attainment of raga but by the teachings of scriptures. So the inspiration is coming not from raga but from scriptures. So here, if you see, the word raga here refers to actually lobha. Lobha means greed. Greed to follow in the footsteps of so that lobha, so the yatra raga anavaptatvat should be read as yatra lobha anavaptatvat, where there is no clear greed to follow in the footsteps of the Vrajavasis, but the inspiration is coming from shasanenaiva shastrasya, shastrasya shasan, which means the inspiration from scriptures. Okay, so then that is called as Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, he says. शास्त्रोक्तया प्रबलया तत्तत् मर्यादयान्विता वैदि भक्तिर इयम कैश्चिन मर्यादा मार्ग उच्यते. So he says that this path is also called as Maryada Marga. So Maryada Marga means which is the path of rules. So that path which is governed by the rules is Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. Okay, and that which is governed by greed is Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti, and that which is governed by spontaneous devotion, that is Bhava and Prema Bhakti, like that. Then Srila Rupa Goswami defines Raganuga Bhakti. He says, Virajantim abhivyaktam vrajavasi janadisho atmikam anusrita yasa raganugochate. So he says, Ragatmikam anusrita. Anusrita means to follow. Ragatmikam means the Vrajavasis. Okay. So, Raganuga Bhakti is defined as that Bhakti which follows after the Ragatmika Bhakti found distinctively in the inhabitants of Vraja. So, we may see that someone may have a strong inspiration to follow after the Bhakti of the Pandavas, let's say, or Arjuna. Someone's role model may not be the Vrajavasis, it's quite possible. It could be Arjuna, it could be Draupadi, or it could even be Devaki and Vasudev. So even though, but that is not strictly called as Ragatmika, that is not called as Raganuga Bhakti. Rupa Goswami does not give a dictionary definition of Raganuga. He gives his own definition. He very specifically indicates only if that lobha is created from seeing the love of the Vrajavasis, only then it is called as Raganuga Bhakti. Otherwise, it is not called as Raganuga Bhakti. So therefore, here the word Ragatmika very clearly indicates only Vrajavasis and not anyone else outside Vrindavan. Sorry. Outside Vraja. It does not include anyone outside Vraja. So therefore, Raganuga means only those whose inspiration is coming from agreed to follow in the footsteps of not any perfected devotee, but only the Vrajavasis. Okay, so this is what he indicates. So now we saw, so therefore again we saw that in, so when we say Vaidhi sadhana bhakti is inspired by Guru, Sadhu and Shastra. But when we talk about Vaidhi sadhana, generally, or when Rupa Goswami talks about Vaidhi sadhana in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, he is not speaking about the Vaidhi sadhana bhakti that is followed by uh, the Sri Vaishnavas or the Madhva Vaishnavas and others. He is definitely talking about Gaudiya Vaishnav Vaidhi sadhana bhakti only before the stage of Nishtha. Generally, Nishtha Ruchi, or you can say before the greed has manifested. You can say like before Nishtha is one, or you should say before Lobha or greed. Okay, so before the greed has manifested, then it is called as Vaidhi sadhana bhakti. So here we are not talking about the Vaidhi sadhana practiced by other sampradayas, because the Vaidhi sadhana practiced by other sampradayas comes from, so just hold on. So Vaidhi, it could be other sampradayas. It is Vaikunta Bija. And our sampradaya, it is Goloka Bija. So this is different. So the seed itself is different, even though both may be called as Vaidhi sadhana, but our Vaidhi sadhana and the others sampradayas Vaidhi sadhana are different. The seed of that our Vaidhi sadhana bhakti itself is Goloka Bij, and for the other sampradayas it is Vaikunta Bij. So very naturally the other sampradayas Vaidhi sadhana bhakti beyond Nishtha will remain Vaidhi sadhana bhakti only till they reach Bhava and Prema. But if we follow our sampradaya practice clearly, naturally after Nishtha or Ruchi, gradually we may develop that greed to follow in the footsteps of the Vrajavasis. Okay, so Vaidhi sadhana, so therefore whenever henceforth either Rupa Goswami or Raghunath Das Goswami or Bhaktivinoda Thakur, when they use the word Vaidhi sadhana bhakti, they are not talking about Vaidhi sadhana practiced by any other sampradaya. They are talking about Vaidhi sadhana practiced by the Gaudiya Vaishnavas only before the stage of Nishtha or before the stage of greed, before that greed is developed. And Raganuga refers to, by the use of the word Raganuga, it refers to Gaudiya Vaishnavas only after Nishtha, or you can say it should ideally be not just after Nishtha, but after Lobha or greed. So when that greed develops, or when that inspiration for practice of bhakti comes from that greed to follow in the footsteps of the Vrajavasis, then it is called as Raganuga. And this generally is called as Raganuga till it reaches Bhava. And the moment it reaches Bhava or Prema, then it is called as Ragatmika Bhakti. This is what the Vrajavasis, you know, yeah, like that. This is inspired by spontaneous, and so Vaidhi is inspired by Guru, Sadhu and Shastra. Raganuga is inspired by greed to follow the Vrajavasis, and Ragatmika is inspired by spontaneous love for pleasing Krishna. But the activities are the same. All three may do hearing, chanting, remembering, etc. But the inspiration to perform that hearing, chanting, and remembrance for Vaidhi comes from Guru, Sadhu, Shastra. For Raganuga comes from greed to follow the footsteps of the Vrajavasis. And for the Ragatmikas, it comes from spontaneous desire to please Krishna. Okay. So now we saw that Rupa Goswami says Raganuga Vivekartam Adav Ragatmika Uchyate. before I start explaining to you what Raganuga is, I should explain to you what Ragatmika is. Okay. So he explains Ragatmika Bhakti, which means when we say Ragatmika, we explained that it refers to the Vrajavasis. So what is Vrajavasis love? Ishte Swarasiki Ragaha Paramavishtata Bhavet Tanmayi Ya Bhavet Bhakti Sa Atra Ragatmika Udita. So we saw that Raga means a spontaneous, deep thirst for pleasing the object of love, which is Krishna of Vrindavan. So even though the word Parama Avishtata, even though the word Parama Avishtata actually means deep absorption, okay, but here it refers to deep thirst. Okay, thirst is the cause and absorption is the effect. Okay, we saw the example. When I see someone just gulping down 1 liter bottle of water, you know, in one shot, what I am seeing is great absorption in drinking that water. But when I talk to him, I would say, "Oh, you are so thirsty." Actually, if you see, thirst is an internal feeling, and unless that person drinks that water with great eagerness, you cannot tell whether that person is hungry or thirsty till you see absorption in drinking or absorption in eating. Okay. So similarly, how do you know that these Vrajavasis have great thirst for serving Krishna? Because when you see that there is great absorption in performing activities for the pleasure of Krishna, either in stringing the garlands or churning butter for Krishna. So, so you see that this is there is this great absorption that is seen, but um, but you cannot see the thirst. But the thirst is understood because that absorption is coming from thirst. Okay, so raga is defined as spontaneous, deep thirst for the object of love, and that bhakti which is impelled exclusively by such a thirst is called as ragatmika bhakti. Tanmayi yabhaved bhakti sa atra ragatmika udita. In this context, ragatmika bhakti means that bhakti which is solely inspired by that thirst to please Krishna. So um, this is exactly the kind of bhakti that which the Vrajavasis follow. Okay, and we saw that this bhakti has two types: Kama Rupa Bhakti and Sambandha Rupa Bhakti. So Kama Rupa is that with in Madhurya Ras, that which is followed by the gopis of Vrindavan, and Sambandha Rupa is it includes Vatsalya Ras, Sakhya Ras, and Dasya Ras, which is performed by other practitioners. So Kama Rupa and Sambandha Rupa. So, but we saw that one may say that why Kama Rupa is separately given. Kama is also a type of Sambandha. Even amorous relationship is also a kind of relationship. Why that should be separately given? Because it is the crest jewel of all the relationships in the spiritual world, of course. In the spiritual world, and also because if you see, Madhurya includes Madhurya, Vatsalya, Sakhya, and Dasya, and Shanta also. And Vatsalya does not include Madhurya, but Vatsalya includes Vatsalya, Sakhya, Dasya, and Shanta. And Sakhya does not include Madhurya and Vatsalya, but Sakhya includes Sakhya, Dasya, and Shanta, like that. So therefore, Madhurya is not ordinary. Madhurya is, at least in the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, is considered to be the crest jewel of all the rasas. So then he says, Ragatmika ekanishtaye vrajavasi janadayah Tesham bhavaptaye lubdo bhavet atra adhikaravan. So who is qualified for practicing raganuga sadhana bhakti? So we have seen what is ragatmika bhakti, that which is practiced by the Vrajavasis. Now, um, uh, who is qualified for practicing raganuga sadhana? Okay, so Rupa Goswami interestingly gives only one of these qualifications. We saw that there are two qualifications. One is uh, lobha, lobha or greed to follow in the footsteps of the Vrajavasis. Another should be actually minimum nishta. Okay, nishta means where there is no influence of mode of passion or mode of ignorance, and which is characterized by absence of five qualities, five things. Okay, so laya, vikshepa, apratipatti, kashaya, and rasaswada we saw. So how do we know if we are qualified for raganuga bhakti? So one should be, we should have great greed to follow in the footsteps of the Vrajavasis. We may have, yes, Prabhu, whenever I hear of the Vrajavasis' love for Krishna, I feel so inspired. I really want to follow. Like that, one may feel like that. Um, um, but another thing is, important qualification is Nishta, steadiness. So steadiness means goodness. So whenever there is influence of mode of passion and mode of ignorance, the goodness will be obstructed, and which means steadiness will be obstructed. So what are the symptoms of lack of steadiness? He says five symptoms. Laya. Laya means sleep, tendency to sleep during sadhana. Okay. Or vikshepa. Vikshepa means tendency to get distracted during sadhana. Apratipatti. Apratipatti means temporary lack of taste for sadhana. So sometimes we may not have अरे आज मन नहीं लग रहा है, today I don't feel that inspired. I mean, it's not that they will start neglecting the bare minimum 16 rounds also, but they may have a habit of chanting some extra rounds, but on some days they may feel like, okay, today I will not chant extra rounds, man nahi lag raha, I don't feel like. And the fourth symptom is kashaya. Kashaya means tendency to indulge in past bad habits. So if that tendency is still there, then it means that we have not yet reached the stage of nishta. And the fifth is rasaswada. So rasaswada means when an opportunity for sense gratification is there, then we forget devotional service. So if we have an opportunity to indulge in these five, or if we are troubled by these five symptoms, then which means we still have some time to reach nishta. So therefore, you cannot say lobha or greed is the sole symptom. You should also look out for the second symptom. Have we reached nishta? Do we have these symptoms or not? Or are we free of these tendencies for laya, vikshepa, apratipatti, kashaya, and rasaswada? So therefore, even though Rupa Goswami here in his explanation, he says who is qualified for. So this verse basically talks about qualification for Raganuga Bhakti. Okay, so that's what this verse talks about essentially. But actually, if you see, Rupa Goswami gives only one of these qualifications, which he says Ragatmika Ekanishta. So the person, and also he says Tesham Bhavaptaye Lubdo. Lubdo here refers to greed. Okay, so he talks about greed, but interestingly, he does not explicitly talk about Nishta, but Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and other acharyas very clearly indicate Nishta is a prerequisite. So therefore, one should not say that yesterday he got he started chanting Mahamantra, and today he says that I am very inspired and I really want to follow in the footsteps of the Vrajavasis. He says no, 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 no. That greed is not a reliable greed. That greed is reliable only when the symptom of Nishta is also there, minimum. Okay, so therefore that's what he says here. Ragatmika ekanishta. Nishta means goal. So that a Vaidhi sadhaka can also have. Even for us, our goal is, we don't say Vaikunta, we generally say Goloka only. That is our goal. So Vaidhi sadhaka can also have Ragatmika ekanishta, but we may not have Tesham bhavaptaye lubdha. We may not have that kind of greed. Okay. But when that greed manifests, then we are qualified for practicing Raganuga Bhakti. But that greed is a reliable greed only if that greed is accompanied by the symptoms of Nishta. Only then it is a reliable greed, like that. And then we saw uh, how do you identify that greed? Further symptoms of the greed, he says, Tattad bhavadi madhurye shrute dir yad apekshate natra shastram na yuktim cha tad lobotpatti lakshanam. Tad loba utpatti lakshanam. The symptoms of that greed. Okay. What are the symptoms of greed? Okay. So he says the appearance of that greed is indicated by yadhihi na apekshate, when the intelligence does not depend on shastram cha yuktim cha. So therefore we saw um, uh, he does not say that a Raganuga Bhakta does not follow Shastras. He says that a Raganuga Sadhaka is his inspiration to practice bhakti is not necessarily coming from the Shastras, it is coming from the Vrajavasis. But he does not say that the uh, Raganuga Sadhakas does not follow Shastras or they are averse to following the Shastras. They don't have an aversion to follow Shastras, but the inspiration is coming from the life of the Vrajavasis. So, how did he develop that inspiration? Tad tad bhavadi madhurye shrute. After hearing from the scriptures, the kind of love that the Vrajavasis possess towards Krishna. So, after hearing that, while they were practicing Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, when they heard these things, through that they developed this attraction. So, when um, um, so till when, so this verse talks about uh, till when should Vaidhi Sadhaka be dependent on Shastras. So till when should a Vaidhi Sadhaka be dependent on the Shastras? That's what this verse talks about. He says, Rupa Goswami says, Vaida Bhakti Adhikari tu Bhava Avirbhavana Avadi Atra Shastram Tata Tarkam Anukulam Apekshate. He says, Vaida Bhakti Adhikari tu. But a Vaidhi Bhakti Adhikari, Atra Shastram Tata Tarkam Anukulam Apekshate. He should consider the favorable use of logic and scripture. He should accept the rules of scriptures and favorable use of logic. Bhava Avirbhavana Avadi, until the appearance of Bhava Bhakti. Whereas, we saw this last time. If you say Shraddha, Sadhu Sangha, Bhajana Kriya, Anartha Nivritti, Nishtha, Ruchi, Asakti, Bhava, Prema, for a Vaidhi Bhakti Adhikari, till Bhava he is dependent on Shastras. Okay. Whereas a Raganuga Sadhaka, he may give up dependence on Shastras either at Nishtha or Ruchi or Asakti, depending on whenever the Lobha develops, whenever the greed develops. That is the symptom. So, whenever greed develops. So depending on that, he is dependent on scriptures. Till that, he is dependent on scriptures. When that greed develops, then the inspiration is no longer coming primarily from scriptures, it is coming from that greed. like that. So then this verse talks about practice of Raganuga sadhana. How is Raganuga sadhana practice? Huh? Raganuga sadhana. Okay. So how is Raganuga sadhana practiced? He says, Krishnam smaran janam chasya preshtam nija samihitam tattat kata rataschaso kuryad vasam vraje sada. So he says that Krishnam smaran. So one remembers the Vrindavan form of Krishna. Cha asya preshtam janam smaran. And so smaranam or remembrance is a very important aspect of Raganuga sadhana practice. Okay. So he remembers the Vrindavan form of Krishna. So remembrance also, if you see, it should be a favorable remembrance. For example, one who is in Vatsalya Rasa, he remembers Balya, the Balya form of Krishna, because the childhood form of Krishna is Vatsalya Poshak. It nourishes Vatsalya Rasa. And if someone is in Sakya Rasa, then he should meditate on the Pauganda or boyhood form of Krishna. And if someone is in Madhurya, then he should meditate on the Kaishora form of Krishna. Okay. So this meditation on Krishna, Vrindavan Krishna only, but also there are particular, um, you know, forms of Krishna or the age of Krishna, uh, that is favorable for inspiring particular rasa. So one at the stage of Vatsalya, he meditates in the Balya Avastha, Sakya Pauganda Avastha, and Madhurya is Kaishora Avastha. And not only that, they don't just meditate on Krishna. As Prabhupada says, Krishna is never alone in Vrindavan. He's always surrounded by his devotees. So one who is in Vatsalya, he meditates on Balyavastha of Krishna, being taken care by Mother Yashoda or Nanda Maharaj or the elderly Gopas or Gopis of Vrindavan. So he says, Cha asya preshtam janam nija samihitam. So one should not just meditate on Krishna, but one should meditate on his dear associates who have inclinations for service similar to one's own. So if one's inclination for a Raganuga sadhaka, if he is aspiring to develop Vatsalya mood of serving Krishna, then he should meditate on not only Krishna in his Balya Avastha, but he should meditate on Nanda Maharaj or Yashoda Mata or the other elderly Gopas or Gopis of Vrindavan. Similarly, if a Raganuga sadhaka is aspiring after Sakyaras, then he should not just meditate on Krishna in his Pauganda Avastha, but he should also, along with that, meditate on, Subal, Sridama, like that. And the third is, if someone is aspiring after Madhurya Rasa, then one should not just meditate on Krishna in his Kaishora Avastha, but one should also meditate on the gopis, Lalita, Vishaka, Radharani, like that. So not just remembering Krishna and his associates, tat kata ratah. One should absorb oneself in hearing topics related to them also. And the third is one should always live in Vrindavan, either physically and mentally, or at least mentally live in Vrindavan. So these are the three aspects that we saw. Okay. So the three aspects are, so one is remembrance. Second is hearing. And the third is living. So these are the prominent ways in which a Raganuga sadhaka practices. He remembers Krishna in that particular avastha along with the devotees who serve him in that mood, and he hears topics related to Krishna in those pastimes, and he aspires to live in Vrindavan, or he actually lives, or at least aspires to live, or mentally always lives in Vrindavan, like that. So this is the practice of Raganuga Sadhana. And we saw that there is a progression of inclination in Raganuga Bhakti also. Gradually, as one progresses in Raganuga Bhakti, so we saw that there is steady bhakti with inspiration from Shastras. First thing is, the first stage is, first, there is clear symptoms that the person has reached the stage of Nishta. He is practicing steady bhakti with inspiration coming from the Shastras, which means initially he is practicing Vaidhi Bhakti. Then in the second stage, he develops a generic attraction to Vrajavasi's love for Krishna. So even though there may be many Shastric personalities, and he likes all of that, but specifically he is developing a great taste for the kind of love that the Vrajavasis have towards Krishna. Then, if you see, the third stage is that he develops attraction to Vrajavasis in particular rasa, which means not only is he inspired by the Vrajavasis, but he is inspired by Vrajavasis in particular rasa. Let's say Sakya rasa. This is the third stage. Then in the fourth stage, he develops attraction to a particular class of gopas. Like because we took Sakya, there may be Priya Sakas, Priya Narma Sakas, like that. Many classes of gopas are there. Even amongst the gopas, he may develop attraction for a particular class of gopas and their activities and the way they serve Krishna and so on. This is the fourth stage. And when he progresses further, then he develops attraction to a particular gopa of that class of Priya Narmasaka, say Subal, like that. And then in the most advanced stage of Raganuga Sadhana, he starts meditating on and following Subal. So like that, there is a gradual transition. But the first symptom is that one should clearly have the symptoms of Nishta. That's what we saw last time. Okay. And then this verse talks about internal and external practice of Raganuga Sadhana. Internal and external practice of Raganuga Sadhana. Okay. So this is a very famous verse. Seva sadhaka rupena siddha rupena chatrahi tadbhava lipsuna karya brajalokanusarataha. So following after the inhabitants of Braja, one should perform service in one's physical body. So physical body is sadhaka rupa, is physical body, and siddha rupa is mentally. Okay. So we will see tadbhava lipsuna, with a desire for a particular bhava. So we saw that practice of Raganuga Sadhana, in practice of Raganuga Sadhana, there is Smaranam, Shravanam, staying in Braja, we saw this. And Seva of Raganuga Sadhaka, there is Sadhaka Rupa Seva and there is Siddha Rupa Seva. He talks about two. Okay. Sadhaka Rupa Seva means externally are seeing you, your external activities should be following the footsteps of the six Goswamis. And Siddha Rupa Seva means it is internal meditation, internal service, meditation, following the Nitya Siddha devotees of Vrindavan. So if one is aspiring for Madhurya Rasa, then one may internally meditate on one's own service as a Manjari or whatever, but there is an internal meditation. So this is Jiva Goswami very clearly clarifies, and Vishwanath Chakravarti also clarifies. Even though Rupa Goswami does not explicitly mention this in his verse itself, which is why actually in our Sampradaya, if you see, you will see devotees who reject Jiva Goswami but accept Rupa Goswami's teachings. What they say, you see them males dressed up as females. They are wearing saris and speaking like gopis and acting like gopis, dancing like gopis, and eventually indulging in abominable activities actually. So this is because of neglecting the warning of Srila Jiva Goswami, who says, look, this has to be properly understood. He's talking about Sadhaka Rupa Seva and Siddha Rupa Seva. In the Sadhaka Rupa Seva, in your external practices, you should not follow the Vrajavasi that you are aspiring after, but you should follow the Goswamis of Vrindavan, because they are also Vrajaloka only. You see here. So, Vrajalokanusarataha. So, Vrajalokanusarataha refers to, so Vrajaloka are two types. Okay. So, Vrajaloka are two types. One is the Vrajavasis in Vraja, and second are Vrajavasis in Chaitanya Leela, who are the Goswamis. So both are Vrajavasis, and for us, even our own spiritual master Srila Prabhupada, they are all Vrajavasis. So even one day, if we may become qualified to practice Raganuga Sadhana, our external practices should always be following after the Vrajavasis in Chaitanya Leela. Externally, we should never try to practice the Vrajavasis in Vrindavan. That is for internal meditation. Okay, so that's what. So the external activities should follow in the footsteps of the Goswamis, whereas the internal meditation should be following the Nitya Siddha devotees of Vrindavan. So this is where the problem came, where they told, oh, Vrajalokanusarataha, Sadhaka Rupa, Siddha Rupa Seva should be following after the footsteps of the Vrajavasis only. So you had males dressing as females and all such kinds of perverted practices manifested due to improperly understanding this particular aspect. Okay. So I think this is where we ended our discussion last week. Before we move further, we will pause for a while and take questions now. So questions, comments, whatever. So if you have any comments, questions, please raise your hand. I will unmute you. You can please speak. Yes, Navadvip Chandra Prabhu, I'm unmuting you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes,
Prabhu, my question is like, how do we get this greed? Like, if we are saying that Raganuga comes after Nishta and before Bhava. Yeah, like if we are saying that Raganuga comes after Nishta and before Bhava, it means like it may come at any of the stages. So what ascertains that someone can get it at the stage of Nishta, someone may get it at the stage of Ruchi, and someone at the stage of Asakti?
Okay. So what decides? Okay, let me just hold on for a second. Oh, I'm sorry. I made a mistake. Okay. So your question is, what decides? I will just, I will write it so that devotees can take it also. Oh, just hold on. So your question is, okay. What decides when or how soon one will get lobha or greed? Correct, na?
Yes.
So it solely depends on two factors. Okay. The first factor is that association. Association which is nourishing our mood. And the second factor is practice solely following the books of our acharyas. Our acharyas means Gaudiya acharyas. So if our practice is getting nourishment solely from the practice of from the books of our acharyas, then it is possible, and we should have the association also of uh, of devotees who may also nourish that mood. So in that case, then we can get that greed very easily. So the more we have, if we have it, then we may get it at nishtha. If that is not that strong, we may get it at ruchi or asakti, like that. Is that okay, bro?
So, Prabhu, I didn't understand nourishing our mood. What does that mean, Prabhu?
Nourishing our mood means once you reach nishtha, depending on what kind of uh, um, depending on what kind of association you have, whatever is their mood of worshipping Krishna. Let's say you do have association of um, let's say devotees who are already at the stage of Raganuga Bhakti, and they have a particular mood, and so that would be the mood very likely you will also develop. So which means nourishing our mood means, or to put it in another way, whatever association you have, that is the mood you will also develop, because their association will nourish that mood only.
Okay.
Is that okay, bro?
Yeah. Prabhu, I had one more question. I don't know.
Yeah.
So last time, like you had said that what we are practicing is Vedi in form, but Raganuga and content. And what we are practicing now is potentially Raganuga only. When it is in seed form, the seed of banyan tree and seed of some other tree looks very similar. But when it becomes a tree, it looks quite different.
Correct.
The seed that our acharyas have given is actually Goloka seed only.
Correct.
For others, it is Vaikuntha seed.
Mm-hmm.
So the seed or the or if I may say, the greed is something we get at the stage of Shraddha only.
Yeah, but it is in a very covered form. Yeah, the greed is there, but it is covered by a prominence of Rajogun and Tamogun. So which don't allow that greed to actually manifest actually.
Okay, so it grows at the stage of Nishtha.
Yeah, beyond Nishtha, yeah, it actually, when the Tada Rajastamo Bhava Kamalobhadayasche Chete Terana Viddam Sthitam Satve Prasidati. The influence of Rajogun and Tamogun is gone, and when you have a favorable association, slowly it starts manifesting actually.
Thank you.
Thank you. Amal Mahaprabhu, Prabhu, I am unmuting you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you so much for your wonderful explanations, and it has always been a pleasure to hear from you. And I'm so happy to be part of this group now.
I'm very glad that you could join also. Thank you very much.
Hari. So I have two questions. One is small. Prabhu, could you give the reference of this that Nishtha is the qualification for practicing Raganuga also? As you said, Rup Goswami only mentions one of them, which is greed or lobha, presence of lobha. But the second one, it is the nishtha, is also a compulsory thing.
Yeah.
If you give me a
one reference that I remember is Shivram Swami Maharaj himself in Manasiksha commentary, he mentions, and In his Shuddha Bhakti Chintamani also, he does mention that this is a reliable symptom of greed is when that greed is seen in conjunction with absence of obstacles to steady practice of devotional service. So I think he gives references. I don't exactly recollect the references, but he does give references in Shuddha Bhakti Chintamani.
Okay, so I'll see over there.
Yeah.
Second question, Prue.
Yeah.
Like I have heard this sometimes. Like when you say the association is what actually nourishes the mood, and that's how a person will develop attraction towards Vrajvasis or Raganuga Bhakti, which is obviously develop any attraction. Hearing is the source, and hearing means association. You
Correct.
associate, and so now one thing which I have seen in my life particularly, and which I also uh, extrapolate based on that, that when I came in association, like let's say, my case, it was His Holiness Bhanu Swami Maharaj, who very particularly was mentioning about Raganuga Bhakti and explanations like that. So that drew my attention more towards like, okay, we have to probably think on these lines. So, but I also hear that is not the regular way we present Krishna consciousness in our overall society. Especially sometimes some preachers go a little more overbound. They say that we have to only follow what Prabhupada has given, and we don't need to look at what much of other acharyas are actually speaking. So my question is then, is it how will it be possible? Of course, Srila Prabhupada does speak about Brajvasis, he does speak about Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he does speak about Rup Goswami. Yet at the same time, at least for me, it was not very evident that okay, Vrajvasis is what we have to actually start following. It is just okay, we start chanting Hare Krishna with the goal of going back to Goloka. That is the question then.
Yeah. So your question is why we don't emphasize uh, uh, like
Mood.
the mood. Yeah, sometime because there is a potential and we do have a history of it also, as we see in the case of the classic Gopi Bao Club example, where prematurely people start focusing on that. So maybe sometime down the line we will take this theme also, that in Shuddha Bhakti Chintamani towards the end, Srila Shivaram Swami Maharaj writes, clearly explains at what stage of one's devotional practice where one needs to focus. It's not that eternally one should not focus on these topics, but just that at what stage one should focus on what aspect of Krishna Katha. In a very systematic way in Shuddha Bhakti Chintamani, he explains this. So, so yes, prematurely when we focus on that, then it becomes a problem. But we do need to speak about. That is why a very important aspect of our discussion should not just be what we should hear, what we should not hear, but it should also be a clear-cut understanding of adhikar. So what is the qualification? How do we assess our own qualification? And at what qualification, what should be read, what should be heard, what should be meditated upon? So that emphasis is actually very important actually. So therefore, we almost never tend to hear about a very clear scientific explanation of adhikar. You know, who should do what. We generally hear a very blanket statement that these things should not be heard. Mm. So that sort of confuses people. So that is why we are one thing that we are trying to do is clearly understand the adhikar, because the shastras do talk about adhikar, even between adhikar for karma, jnana and bhakti. Not only that, but even within bhakti, what is the adhikar for shraddha or nishtha or ruchi or asakti? These are like very clearly indicated. When we talk about that, then one would not necessarily try to concentrate on those topics for which they are not qualified for, like that.
Yes, Roji. So also to develop the mood, you will have to focus on
Okay.
what
Thank you.
what the Hare
Yeah.
Krishna.
Yes, bro, I can hear you.
Develop the mood, we will have to read from the books of the other acharyas, like the Rup Goswami, for example, and the acharya's books. So, if how will it be possible if we actually only read Srila Prabhupada books? That's also the question which I was asking.
The question was like, what if we just read Prabhupada's books like that?
Yes, correct.
Yeah. One can definitely, one can definitely read just Prabhupada's books. But to say that one should not read any other acharya's books, one should just focus on Prabhupada's books, is just contradictory to Prabhupada's own teachings actually. Because Prabhupada himself in many of the purports does indicate that a sincere, serious student would do well to read the commentaries of Jiva Goswami, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, like that he very clearly indicates. And there are a few purports I can show you. In the first canto only he writes, in the third canto he writes, in many of the purports he does write. So that is one thing based on Prabhupada's own writing. The second thing is, then we mean to say that the writings of Rupa Goswami, Jiva Goswami, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur are absolutely no longer relevant. Is it that their shelf life is over, henceforth no one should read it? Is it like that, or did they write it for someone else? So I will not necessarily, that argument is not very attractive, at least to me. So definitely Prabhupada does say, and but just that one should not prematurely jump. Generally what happens, when people read other acharyas books and they very quickly start comparing Prabhupada's writings with the other acharyas books, that is a very immature approach. One should not compare like that, because every acharya brings his own unique contribution to purport. Like for example, if you see Srila Sridhar Swami's commentary to one of the devotees was sharing like this. So if you see Sridhar Swami's commentary, his commentary is, he's like a magistrate. He gives laws. This is like this is like this, like that. He gives conclusions. That is his uniqueness. If you see Jiva Goswami's commentary, he gives very elaborate shastric connections and conclusions, and he's like a mathematician. His commentaries are like that. And if you see Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary, his uniqueness is he is like a musician. So here and there he will bring rasa from different in a very simple Bhagavad Gita verse also he will beautifully weave in rasa, and he will make that verse sound very sweet and musical. So like that, like Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes in Machitta Madgata Prana Bodhayanta Parasparam Katayantascha Mam Nityam Tushyanti Cha Ramanti Cha. So in that purport, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes that Bodhayanta Parasparam and Katayanta. He says that if for devotees, if they have a person to hear, they will speak. If there is a person to speak, they will hear. If there is no second person, they will spontaneously sing, like that. It's very, very juicy and very, very musical to hear. So he's like his purports are like, musician. Whereas if you see Prabhupada's purports, his uniqueness is he is like a magician. So in his purports, you see, even though understanding that the ultimate conclusion that Krishna gives is to practice pure devotional service only. So even in places where either karma or jnana or yoga is described, out of nowhere, he will give a pure devotional explanation, just like pulling a rabbit out of the hat. You don't see the rabbit at all. Out of nowhere, the rabbit comes. So every acharya has a very unique contribution, but an immature approach to studying the other acharyas books is immediately we start comparing and we say, oh Prabhuji, this purport sounds better than that purport. I mean, no, it's not like that. all purports are equally good, just that we are not able to appreciate what the other Acharya is presenting clearly. That is our problem, it's not the Acharya's problems. So many times we get into that, and seeing that kind of an immature approach, maybe leaders could have said, you should never read other Acharya's books, only Prabhupada's books. Actually, in the initial stage, that is very good, because we should know what our founder Acharya has come to give, where he has decided to emphasize and all that. Understanding the emphasis of our founder Acharya, with that as the background, I personally feel we can read other Acharya's commentaries, especially if we have read the Prabhupada's books nicely. That's my opinion.
Yes, Guruji. My experience of reading Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Sanatana Goswami is that my appreciation for Prabhupada purports and understanding of Prabhupada purports has actually increased.
That is
Much
the
more.
litmus test, actually. That
Yes.
is exactly the litmus test. So if after reading the other Acharya's commentary, two things: if you are able to appreciate Prabhupada's writings better, and if you are able to explain Prabhupada's writings
Mhm.
better. Why Prabhupada writes the way he writes, even though the verse explains in a different way? If you are able to explain it, and if you are able to appreciate it better, then I think you are ready to appreciate other Acharya's commentaries also.
Yes. Please, can I ask this one more question?
Yeah. Yes.
You said that if Nishtha would mean absence of mode of passion and ignorance.
Yeah.
So,
Not absence of,
Mhm.
absence of the influence of mode of passion and ignorance. There may be trace amounts of passion and ignorance, but it does not affect his steady practice of bhakti.
Mhm. So the Rajoguna and Tamoguna tendencies are still present, that means.
Yeah, maybe very trace amounts may be there, but it will not affect his steady practice of bhakti.
Why it is becoming difficult for me to understand, because like what we see, that the influence of modes, like is it that if we overcome Rajoguna and Tamoguna, is it like almost we have reached to pure the what you say, the bhava type of level? Because that is where I'm not able to understand that.
No, that can be one symptom, but there are other symptoms which are very clearly given, because one may naturally start practicing bhakti with a very significant amount of
Mhm.
goodness. So in that case, the influence of the anartha nivritti may be very little remaining, but artha pravritti may not have significantly happened. So artha pravritti is positive attachment to the process, positive attachment to Krishna, uh, may not have significantly happened. So therefore, non-influence of rajogun and tamogun is not a reliable symptom. So along with that, other symptoms are also mentioned in books like Madhurya Kadambini, where other symptoms are clearly mentioned. How would you how can you identify, or how can we identify if we have reached that stage or not? There are other symptoms also mentioned. It is not just absence of the influence of Rajogun and Tamogun, but that also is an important aspect.
We can say that actually if we have a goal of Raganuga Bhakti from the very beginning, we can tell everybody and for ourselves also, Sattva Guna we can increase as much as possible.
Yeah, can you repeat your question?
The question was in our own practice and in our preaching, that means the emphasis of increasing Sattva Guna can also be present. Mhm.
That cannot be overemphasized, because our means of increasing sattva guna is by diligently practicing devotional service only. Mam chayo avyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samati tetan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. So the emphasis should be to diligently practice bhakti. Even though bhakti can help us transcend the three modes, by bhakti we first transcend the two lower modes and then subsequently transcend the third mode, which is goodness. So if one diligently practices bhakti, then automatically, gradually, uh, uh, the rajogun and tamogun can be subdued and sattva can be increased. But in doing that, we as a principle of anukulyasya sankalpo pratikulyasya varjanam, accepting whatever is favorable for bhakti and rejecting whatever is unfavorable for bhakti, automatically one may reject the rajoguni atmosphere or tamoguni atmosphere and accept a more sattvic atmosphere, but as a principle of anukulyasya sankalpo pratikulyasya varjanam. So the emphasis is not on rejecting rajogun, tamogun and accepting sattva, but the emphasis is on whatever is favorable for bhakti, I will accept, like that.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Very good.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. Okay. Aranya Vihari Prabhu, did you raise your hands? Should I unmute you? I am unmuting you just in case if you have a question you can ask.
No, Prabhuji, I think you already answered the question in Prabhuji's question only, because some preachers, even I also heard saying that whatever required from other acharyas' books, Srila Prabhupada has already given in his books. So we do not need to unnecessarily go hither and thither and try to find more and more rasa on a premature state. So better is just to follow Srila Prabhupada.
Correct. Because you have clarified on a premature state, yes, we should not. I agree with that. And many times people tend to overdo it and they tend to neglect reading Srila Prabhupada's books properly and very prematurely tend to jump. And that is a real problem. So we cannot let the pendulum swing on both sides. We cannot say absolutely you are committing a sinful activity by touching any other acharya's books. That is one side of the pendulum. And the other side of the pendulum is, yeah, at any stage, right from the beginning, if you like Prabhupada, you read Prabhupada. If you like Vishnu Chakadakur, you read Vishnu Chakadakur. If you like Jiva Goswami, read Jiva Goswami. No problem. That is another side of the pendulum. So both should be avoided. First, initially, we should try to properly understand what Prabhupada has presented. And if we try to understand what Prabhupada has presented nicely, Prabhupada himself has mentioned, serious students would do good by referring to the commentaries of Jiva Goswami and Vishnu Chakadakur. Prabhupada has very clearly mentioned in 2-3 of his purports. So he is not denying that, he is not neglecting, he is not stopping us from doing it. But first we need to understand what the founder Acharya has to give. And when that is very clear, and as we saw, there are the 2 symptoms that we are ready to read the purports of the other Acharyas, is that by reading the other purports, we are able to appreciate Prabhupada's purports better. And second, we are able to explain Prabhupada's purports better. So then we are ready. Rather, if we are trying to find faults in Prabhupada's purports, then we should immediately stop reading other Acharya's commentaries, because we don't have the right mode actually.
No, Prabhuji, I think with me also the same stands correct, that whenever I read, or even if still I read other Acharya's purports or commentaries, my appreciation, or other appreciation is one thing, but the understanding of that particular verse deepens more after reading again Srila Prabhupada's purports.
Yeah.
And just Prabhuji, on a practical aspect, a small question I have, like for example, we all sadhakas. So is there a timeline or a kind of a, you can say, check and balance kind of a mechanism that yes, after these many number of years, or maybe after these many number of after these many courses, we are eligible to read other Acharya's books? Or I mean, one's own attraction can, I mean, with one's own attraction, somebody can just pick up the book and start reading and start correlating with Srila Prabhupada. So how we should?
Yeah, I am not very sure if that kind of if you have completed Bhakti Shastri, are you ready to read other Acharya's commentaries? I am not sure. I cannot say like that. It also depends on how diligently you have studied also. And some people may not have that natural inclination also for reading other Acharya's commentaries. So you say that, oh, you have completed Bhakti Shastri, you are not reading Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur. You cannot ask like that. So you are supposed to read Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur after your Bhakti Shastri. How come you are not reading? It is not necessary. So like that, for me personally, by the time I completed my Bhakti Shastri, I had read Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita, Nectar of Devotion, etc. at least a few times, maybe 3-4 times. I had already read and thoroughly made notes and all that. And subsequently, I found the inspiration to read from Baldev Devbhushan Vishnu Jagadakur's commentaries of Bhagavad Gita, and of course Jiva Goswami and Vishnu Jagadakur's commentaries for the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, like that. But by then I had quite nicely studied, explained, written the exam and all that. And then I got, it was a natural inspiration I did. And but most of the other, my batchmates or other devotees that I see, some of them take very long time. It's not that they did not read, but when they saw that other people, uh, their understanding getting more and more fine tuned, then they also eventually got inspiration. They also read, they found it useful, like that. So we cannot exactly say that yes, after Bhakti Shastra, like that. I don't think we can say like that.
Sure, Prabhuji.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so very much, Prabhu.
Okay, so I don't see any further hands up. So I think we will start discussing today's portions. Till now we have been discussing, revising what we have seen already. So, so today we will continue our discussion. So Srila Rupa Goswami says, this is Bhakti Vinod Thakur, we are reading Bhakti Vinod Thakur's commentary to the third verse of Manasiksha, and Bhakti Vinod Thakur is quoting Srila Rupa Goswami. Just basically the whole purport, Bhakti Vinod Thakur is explaining what is this ragam. Yadi che ravasam vrajabhuvi sa ragam pratijanur yuvadvandvam tachet paricharitum arad abhilashe. What is this raga? What is this raga that Raghunath Das Goswami is talking about? So he is explaining. What is this raga? This raga is the love, the flavor and intensity of love that the Vrajavasis have for Krishna. And how do we develop that flavor and intensity of love? By practicing Raganuga Bhakti. This is what, and what is this Raganuga Bhakti and how it is practiced? For that also, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur is quoting Srila Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And we are trying to understand, what is the qualification. Of course, he is quoting that also, but further details which are given in other books, we are just cross-referencing, that's all. So, Shravanot Kirtanadini Vaida Bhakti Uditani tu Yani Angani Chatanyatra Vignayani Manishibhi. So, one should not think that in Raganuga Bhakti, there are different other limbs that are practiced. So, if you see in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Srila Rupa Goswami talks about 64 limbs. And this he discusses in the Vaidhi Bhakti section. Okay. So, if you remember, 64, I'm sorry. So, just hold on for a second. So, 64 limbs he talks about the stage of Vaidhi Sadhana. So, the same 64 limbs he says should be practiced by Raganuga Sadhaka also, with certain modifications for few limbs. But for most of the limbs, as it is, whatever the Vaidhi Sadhaka practices, the 64 limbs mentioned in Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the same 64 limbs are practiced by the Raganuga Sadhaka also. So therefore, seeing the external practices of anyone, you cannot say for sure whether that person is a Vaidhi Sadhaka or a Raganuga Sadhaka. Okay, so the Raganuga Sadhaka's internal practices we cannot know. Okay, externally, if you see, he is practicing the same 64 limbs as the Vaidhi Sadhaka. So therefore, you cannot say from an external practice, he may come and stand for the same Mangalarti, he may sit in your same Japa circle and chant 16 rounds, he may take darshan of the deities while you are taking the same way you are taking, he may offer the same water that you are offering to Tulsi Maharani, but you cannot tell for sure that he is also practicing Vaidhi Sadhana just like you. He may be practicing Raganuga Sadhana. We do not know. We cannot tell for sure. Okay, because just from the external activities, because the external practices are same for both the Vaidhi Sadhaka and the Raganuga Sadhaka. That's what in this verse Bhaktivinoda Thakur is quoting Srila Rupa Goswami, indicating that Shravanot Kirtanadini Vaida Bhakti Uditani tu Yani Angani cha Tanyatra Vigyayani Manishibhi. The discriminating practitioners should accept, they cannot reject, they should accept the Angas. Discriminating practitioners should accept the Angas which were mentioned in Vaidhi Bhakti, such as hearing and chanting, as the Angas of Raganuga Bhakti. When devotional service is practiced when it matures, I'm sorry, just hold on. Just hold on for a second. I think someone's. Okay, sorry. When devotional service in practice matures, one is endowed with a stage of Bhava Dasha, also known as Rati or strong attachment. So when devotional service in practice refers to sadhana bhakti, it could be Vaidhi sadhana or Raganuga sadhana, Vaidhi or Raganuga. Okay. When it matures, one is endowed with the stage of Bhava Dasha. Bhava Dasha refers to Bhava Bhakti. Okay. Also known as Rati or strong attachment. So Srila Rupa Goswami describes Rati as follows. So he's explaining what is Rati or Bhava. Iyam eva Rati Prauda Mahabhava Dasham Vrajet. Ya Mrigya Syad Vimuktanam Bhaktanam cha Variyasam. When this Rati attains maturity, it becomes Mahabhava. Okay. It is difficult to state to obtain. It is a difficult state to obtain for devotees in general and even for liberated souls. So, which means this says that Bhava is very rare. That is why Bhava, Rupa Goswami says, is Sudurlava. It's very rare. Sudurlava, very rare. Okay. So that's what this says. And this Bhava is the seed which actually becomes, or you can say, Rupa Goswami, I think in the next verse, yeah. He says, Syad Hridayam Rati Prema Prodyan Sneha Kramadayam Syan Manaha Pranayo Rago Anurago Bhava Ityapi. So when this Samartha Rati or this general Bhava becomes intense, it is called as Prema. On becoming more intense, Prema may turn successively into Sneha, Mana, Pranaya, Raga, Anuraga, Bhava, etc., Mahabhava, etc. So if you see, beyond Bhava and Prema, also there are 7 more stages. Okay, like Mana, Raga, Anuraga, okay, Pranaya, Mahabhava, etc. But these stages are not discussed in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. These are further discussed in books like Ujjwal Neelamani, okay, which is a very esoteric book, which cannot be read while we are, at least definitely not before Nishtha. But Bhakti Rasam Sindhu at the most talks about Prema, that's all. Okay, till Bhava and Prema it elaborately describes, but the additional stages it does not describe. So when Bhakti Rasam Sindhu talks about Prema, This prema includes the 7 additional stages also. So it does not elaborate on in detail. Okay. And but the seed of all these further 8 stages, including prema, the seed is bhava. Okay. It is this bhava only which condenses more and more and more and more and more, and it gives the further stages. So is it bijam ikshus sacha rasaha sa gudah khanda eva sa sharkara sita sa sayatasya sitopala. So this intensifying is just like sugar cane, which progressively turns to juice, jaggery, candy sugar, ordinary sugar, white sugar, and refined white sugar. So these are the various stages of more and more and more and more refined and condensing. So similarly, but the bijam that is mentioned here, this bijam or the seed is bhava. And then when it condenses more and more and more and more, it becomes prema and so on. Prema, raga, mana, anuraga, like that. Ata prema vilasasyur bhavaha snehadayastushat prayo vyavahriyantemi prema shabdena suribihi. The root of all these transformations is the sugar cane. So this sugar cane is actually bhava. Similarly, prema is the root of all the transformations such as sneha and mana. Thus, devotees sometimes use the general term prema for all these transformations. Okay. So sometimes the general term prema is used for all these transformations. There are unlimited varieties and details in such prema due to the unlimited varieties in the living entities. But these are not discussed in detail in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Okay. Yasya यादृश जातीयः कृष्णे प्रेमाभ्युदंचति तस्याम तादृश जातीयः स कृष्णस्यापि उदीयते. Whatever variety of prema arises in those devotees who are in amorous love with him, Krishna reciprocates with them in the same way. So these verses are quoted from Ujjwal Neelamani. So basically to say, so he spoke about why these verses are given, because first he described what is Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. Then he spoke about Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. And how by practicing Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti, one can reach the stage of Ragatmika Bhakti. And in this Ragatmika Bhakti, further there are varieties and stages. So that's what he is describing by quoting from Ujjwal Neelamani. Okay, so that's what he has described here. But these are like, okay, little higher topics. But the point is that he is explaining, do you have a desire to worship Krishna and Radharani in Vrindavan with this kind of love for them that the Vrajavasis have? Then what you should do? Swarupam Shri Rupam Saganamiha Tasyagrajamapi. You should follow your practice of bhakti purely through the teachings of the of our Gaudiya Vaishnava Acharyas only, and no one else. That's what he's indicating. Okay, so therefore such an elaborate discussion we had to understand that what is the kind of love that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to give to us, and how do we attain that, and how do we understand where we are, our own practice of Vaidhi Sadhana right now, how do we eventually come to the stage of Raganuga Sadhana, and what happens when that Raganuga Sadhana matures, how we reach the stage of Ragatmika Bhakti, and how that Ragatmika Bhakti looks like, all that is described here. So to answer the original question with deeper analysis of the love which is connected to the Shringar Rasa of Vraja, we can understand that this prema is not generally available from other sampradayas. And then even if it may be available only to a small degree. See, it is not that Madhurya Rasa or even Parakiya Bhav is not available in the other Sampradayas. See, Parakiya Bhav means unwedded love. So it is not that it is not available in other Sampradayas. There are examples of that in Sri Sampradaya. Andal is one. She is one of the 12 Alvars. And there are other male Alvars also who have exhibited this Naika Bhav. Naika Bhav means unwedded, being the unwedded lover of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This has been shown by quite a few Alvars. So it's not that Parakiya Rasa is seen only in Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. But then when it comes to sadhana, there is nothing called Raganuga sadhana described in the other Sampradayas as a means to attain this kind of Naika Bhav. That is not there. That is very unique to Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. For this reason, Srila Raghunath Das Goswami instructs all the practitioners who desire to attain the mood of the Vrajavasis to accept Sri Swarup Damodar Goswami, Sri Sanatan Goswami, Sri Rupa Goswami, and all the other recipients of Sri Krishna Chaitanya's mercy as their instructing spiritual masters. So you see, one may even have Diksha in another Sampradaya, okay, but one may develop a desire for Siksha from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's line. Okay, that is possible. So there are devotees who were, much before actually meditating on practicing spiritual life, there are devotees who accepted Diksha, Vaishnava Diksha from other Sampradayas. Just because it is like more like a ritual in there. They have their own family guru, or the guru from whom their parents have accepted, grandparents have accepted from the same mutt. Generally they are connected to a particular mutt. So, whoever comes in that family, they actually start take Diksha from that guru, the next guru that comes in that Sampradaya like that, or from that mutt like that. So it is more of a, many times it becomes more of a, you can say like a ritual rather than something very coming from the heart. And later they realize, they come in touch with devotees and they feel very inspired by reading Prabhupada's books, and they feel very inspired, they want to practice. So they need not reject their Diksha that they have received from a bona fide Vaishnava Sampradaya, because rejecting that would be rejecting that Sampradaya only, and rejecting that Guru also. So the Guru may be bona fide. We may not have received the Diksha in a bona fide mood of surrender, that is okay. Okay. So we should not be rejecting the Diksha. We need not reject the Diksha. But if our inspiration is now coming from Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, we can definitely take Diksha from Sri Swarup Damodar, Sri Sanatan Goswami, Sri Rupa Goswami, and all the other recipients of Sri Krishna Chaitanya's mercy as their instructing spiritual masters, which means you can accept them as your Siksha Guru. So you can accept them as your Siksha Guru, but you need not accept them as your, one need not change their Diksha Guru. That is not really necessary if one has taken Vaishnava Diksha from a bona fide Sampradaya. So that is not necessary. So that is about, we have discussed about Saragam, what is the meaning of Raga. We had an elaborate discussion. And then we discussed what is the meaning of Swarupam, Shri Rupam, Saganami Hatasya Grajamapi, which means if you want the kind of love that the Vrajavasis have for Krishna, which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to give, then your practice should be molded by the Goswami's literatures only. And it cannot be from literatures from other sampradaya, because not that they are not bona fide, but their mood is different. So you decide which mood you want, which mood you are attracted by, and accordingly you can follow. So similarly, someone who may be initiated, who may have received a Vaishnava Diksha from Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, may get very powerfully influenced and inspired by teachings of other Sampradaya. So he can take Shiksha from other Vaishnava Sampradayas. It is not that he is committing a sin, but just that he should not think that by taking Shiksha from other Sampradaya, he will attain the same destination which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to give. That would be an illusion. One should not think like that. That would become something like Yatomat Tatopat. So, so therefore, if you genuinely feel, Prabhu, actually I tried my best, but I think more than the Gaudiya Vaishnava teachings, actually the Sri Vaishnava teachings are much more inspiring to me, and I can give my heart full-fledged only to those teachings. I'm somehow, it's very non-organic, and I am not actually getting attracted to the teachings of the Gaudiya Vaishnava Acharyas. It is all right. It is not a sin. But then we should not think that I will take inspiration from them and achieve the destination which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to give. That is not possible. Just as by studying Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's the teachings of the Gaudiya Vaishnava Acharyas, you cannot attain the destination which the Sri Vaishnavas attain. Because that mood will not be nourished. Over a period of time, we will start seeing that our desire itself is changing. So therefore, Vaikuntha is bona fide, Goloka is bona fide. Vrajavasis are bona fide, Vaikuntha-vasis are bona fide. We just have to choose what do we desire, what is our goal. So depending on that, the Shiksha should come from there. Therefore, Raghunath Das Goswami very clearly says, Yadicher avasam vrajabhuvi. If you desire to stay in Vrindavan, saragam, with the kind of love that the Vrajavasis possess towards Krishna, pratijanu, life after life, and yuvad dvandvam tachet paricharitum arad abhilashi. And if you desire to serve the divine couple, Radha and Krishna in Vrindavan, with a mood similar to the Vrajavasis, then Swarupam Shri Rupam Saganamiha Tasyagrajamapi. It is only possible if you follow in the footsteps of Swarup Damodar Goswami, or if you follow the teachings of Swarup Damodar Goswami, Rupa Goswami, Sanatan Goswami, and their followers. Like that. That's what he is indicating here. Okay. So, Pratijanu. Then he talks about this word Pratijanu, means generally it takes many lives to perfect spontaneous devotional service, which with symptoms of pure love. However, with mercy, perfection can happen very quickly. So he says that generally the path of spontaneous love, it may take many lifetimes. But if proper association and proper mercy of very exalted Vaishnavas is there, it can happen very quickly also. In one lifetime also, it is not impossible. And another explanation of the word Pratijanu, which later I think maybe Bhakti Vigyan Goswami Maharaj or Shivaram Swami Maharaj in their commentary they indicate, is that life after life means that the sweetness of Bhauma Vrindavan or Vrindavan in this earthly Vrindavan is actually much more sweeter than even Goloka Vrindavan. So therefore, those who have experienced the sweetness of Bhauma Vrindavan, they don't even aspire the bliss of even Goloka Vrindavan. Why? Because if you see, in Bhauma Vrindavan, the feelings of separation are much more pronounced. The anxiety, like for example, in Goloka Vrindavan, there are no real demons who come to kill Krishna or disturb the Vrajavasis like that. There are no real demons actually. So, but what happens? But the Vrajavasis imagine, oh, Arishtasur might come, Arishtasur is coming. Like that, they imagine, and through that imagination, they feel that anxiety for protecting Krishna, anxiety for Krishna, or feeling of separation from Krishna, and all that is all imagined. But in Bhauma Vrindavan, this is all real. Actually, in reality, Arishtasur comes, Krishna actually fights, they watch that fight, and while they are watching that fight, when Arishtasur picks up Krishna, throws Krishna, they go through those churning within their heart. It is all real. So the extent of the rasas, are more full-fledged even in Bhauma Vrindavan. So therefore, some acharyas say that therefore Bhauma Leela is much more absorbing and engrossing even than Goloka Vrindavan. It's not to put Goloka Vrindavan down, but it is just to glorify the, how wonderful is Bhauma Vrindavan, like that. So therefore, that is another reason why Pratijanu indicates that life after life, even after I achieve perfection of prema, don't send me to Goloka Vrindavan. Wherever in Bhauma Leela, Krishna's pastime is happening, you send me there, I will keep participating in that. That is another explanation of this. Pratijanu, like that. So that brings us to the end of the Bhajan Darpan commentary or Bhaktivinoda Thakur's prose commentary to the third verse of Manas Siksha. So at this point, again, we will pause for a few seconds to see if there are any quick comments, questions, discussions. I will wait for a few minutes to see if there are any quick comments before we move on to Bhaktivinoda Thakur's poetic commentary. So you can raise your hands if there are any questions, comments. Okay, so since there are no further questions, I will move on. So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's, so we will see Bhaktivinoda Thakur's poetic commentary, which is called as Manas Siksha Bhasha. Okay, so this is just a summary. I see. Okay, Aranya Vihari Prabhu, I see your hands up. So you can. I'm unmuting you, so you can ask.
Prabhuji, sorry, I think my network was slow. I was raising my hand earlier also. Okay. So when Bhaktivinoda Thakur mentions that the rasa which Mahaprabhu came to give is only available in Gaudiya Sampradaya, and it is very less available in other Sampradayas. So can you explain that part? Means very less, or maybe not in that detail it is available. So just a bit more explanation on that aspect. Because in Vrindavan, in Braj, or in Mayapur also, we see that Shringaras or some maybe either in a distorted form or maybe in actual form, some kind of Shringaras or Braj mood.
That's what I did touch upon that. That in, like, I gave the example of Sri Vaishnava Sampradayas. I don't Sampradaya. I don't know about other Sampradayas. It is there. It is there. And it has been practiced, and it is Parakiyaras only. And if you read their writings, it is very similar to the writings which are seen in Srimad Bhagavatam or our Acharya's writings also. So the mood expressed is very, very similar. I mean, you would if that if those verses are translated into Sanskrit or translated into English and presented, you would not be able to recognize that this is not the writing of a Gaudiya Vaishnavacharya. It would seem exactly like a Gaudiya Vaishnavacharya because those sentiments have been expressed by acharyas from other sampradayas also. But when it comes to a recommendation as a practice, like for example, Raganuga Sadhana is the practice to attain that Ragatmika Bhakti. as a practice, you don't see it in any of the other sampradayas. That is seen only in Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. So therefore, that being said, you cannot say it is impossible for someone from other sampradayas to read these writings of the acharyas and may feel inspired and try to practice. It may be possible, but there is no clear cut delineate. The route is not very clearly delineated for them to reach that stage. So therefore, it is very rare. So therefore, he does not say impossible. Therefore, he says it is very improbable.
Okay, okay, Prabhuji. So that means the practice is a bit lesser. The writings are already there. So if somebody wants to practice, they can. But
no, actually, you see, Rupa Goswami has written. Rupa Goswami has written Bhakti Rasam Sindhu explaining these paths, explaining the signs of Raganuga, Ragatmika, etc. in great detail. At the same time, if you see Narottam Das Thakur, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, they have written bhajans, Lalsamai bhajans, where they are expressing their desire to follow in the foot, like Shama Gori Ange Dibo, Chandanera Ganda Chamara Dulabo Kabe Heri Mukha Chanda. They are expressing, when will I anoint the bodies of Radha and Krishna with Chandan and give Dudh Chamara for them, offer Tambula and Pan for them, like that. Those their heart, that lalasa is described. Similarly, that kind of lalasa have been described by acharyas from Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya also. Very rarely though. So that kind of lalasa has been described, but what Rupa Goswami and Swarup Damodar Goswami, they have done by systematically presenting it as a sadhana, by delineating how you can reach that spot by practicing these sadhana, that kind of a delineation is not there. So even if you may appreciate their mood, someone may read the Alvar's writings where they are expressing this Parakiya Bhav and expressing this Lalsa. One may read and appreciate, but how to reach that stage, that delineation is not there in the other Sampradayas. It is there only in Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya.
Okay, Prabhuji. So Prabhuji, this reminds a small thing. I was listening to His Holiness Radha Govind Maharaj. Once he said that Ramesh Baba, who is very, very exalted saint considered in Braj, he was mentioning that if somebody really does not want to become Sampradayak or in the boundaries and sees from a pure devotional point of view, if Srila Rupa Goswami would have not given Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, actually the world would have not known the definition of pure devotional service. That's what Ramesh Babaji said in one of his lectures. Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
Okay, so right. So Amal Mahaprabhu, I am unmuting you.
Yes, Prabhuji, Hare Krishna. Continuing on that question.
Yes, Prabhu.
May not be from Siksha perspective, sometimes from the background perspective. Some devotees, they have inclination like Rukmani Vithala, somebody who is from Maharashtra. I have observed that sometimes they feel more attraction towards Rukmani Vithala. Similarly, somebody from South, sometimes they feel more attraction towards Balaji worship or Balaji Katha, etc. So how that would like now means what kind of mood that would be? Would be like Vaikuntha mood if he is worshipping Balaji, in Dwarka mood if he is worshipping Rukmini Vitthal? That was the question.
In the very initial stages, it is perfectly fine. So in the very initial stages, it is perfectly fine. But gradually, when one progresses, one can still continue to worship Balaji. One can still continue to worship Rukmini Vittal. But once attachment, one should see if one's attachment is also to Rukmini Vittal, then probably the teachings of Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya may not necessarily nourish that, especially in the later stages. Or in the later stages, by studying the Gaudiya Vaishnava literatures, their attachment may change also. One should be ready for that. Um, so like that. So if one is so much attached to worshipping Balaji or Lakshmi Narayan, like that, then over a period of time, gradually they will not feel nourishment through Gaudiya Vaishnava literatures. They will look elsewhere.
Mhm.
So, but otherwise, I have seen devotees who did have a lot of affection for these deities. Uh, myself being one example. But after gradually coming, it's not that they start disliking those deities. They very much still like those deities, but the attachment to Radha and Krishna becomes much more prominent, or attachment to Mahaprabhu becomes much more prominent, like that.
Yes, Guruji. Also, from you said Golok Vrindavan and Bhaumya Vrindavan,
Uh-huh.
from a goal perspective, that you mentioned that some of the initiating spiritual masters in their commentary, they wrote that somebody may aspire to be in Bhaumya Vrindavan life after life.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So now that question comes through. I had this question in between also.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody who's aspiring for Vatsalya Ras, probably
Mm-hmm.
for them, Bhaumya Vrindavan would be more attractive because the Vatsalya Ras pastimes as such, they are actually more charming here in the Bhaumya Vrindavan.
Quite
Whereas,
possible.
sorry,
I mean, that kind of differentiation may be there. I don't remember reading, and of course, I'm not that well read also. But that kind of a differentiation may be there. I'm not sure. I'm not aware. Uh, uh, yeah, quite possible.
whereas the Madhurya pastimes, especially,
Mm-hmm.
are they not fully manifested only in the Golok Vrindavan, not in the Bhaumya?
Not very sure though. I'm not very sure about that.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, definitely. See, when we say like that, it is definitely that we are not comparing Bhauma Vrindavan, Goloka Vrindavan to trivialize or minimize the position of Goloka Vrindavan. It is just to say that how Bhauma Vrindavan pastimes are very sweet, like that. That's all.
Mhm.
And it
Like,
is the mood, and it is not even mentioned that such devotees eternally stay in Bhauma Vrindavan only. They never go back to Goloka Vrindavan. That kind of statement is also not there. They do go, but it is just their attachment. That's all. Like someone may feel in Govardhan Eco Village also, many of these pastime places and samadhis and six Goswamis temples, everything has been manifested. Someone may feel more attachment here, but that does not necessarily mean that they will never go back to uh, Goloka Vrindavan. It's not like that.
mhm.
Like that. It's a sentiment. It's a mood. Yeah, that's all.
Usually I felt like this, that Bhaumya Vrindavan is like a training ground to enter into
It
Golok
is.
Vrindavan.
It is there. We are not denying that, but it is not just that one may have a deep attraction for the Bhauma Vrindavan also. That is the point. To the
Okay.
extent that one is willing to take birth again and again. So it is the mood. It's not. We are not talking about reality. We are talking about the mood.
Mood. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hmm?
Very
Right. Thank you. Okay. So since there are no further questions, we have few minutes time. So we will quickly see Bhaktivinoda Thakur's Bengali rendition, which is like a summary of the prose commentary that he has given. This is Manas Siksha Bhasha. So we'll complete this today so that from next Tuesday onwards, we can take the other Acharya's commentary, starting with Shivaram Swami Maharaj's commentary. Okay, so we'll read the Bengali verses, and then we'll see the meaning of those verses. Okay, which will be essentially a summary of the Bhajan Darpan commentary that Bhaktivinoda Thakur has given. रागावेशे व्रजदाम वासे यदि तीव्र काम ताके तव हृदये बितारे राधा कृष्ण लीला रस परिचर्या सुलालस haya yadi nitanta antare. If there is a spontaneous desire and an extreme craving in your heart to live in Vraja, in intense blissful passion, and if you have the longing to understand the divine sweetness of Radha and Krishna's divine play, then what you should do? In the next verse he says, Balita Beshuna Mama Mana Bhajana Chatura Vara Shri Swarupa Damodara Prabhu Seva Yahara Jivana. So if you have this desire, if you have a spontaneous desire and an extreme craving in your heart to live in Vrindavan in intense blissful passion, and if you have the longing to understand the divine sweetness of Radha and Krishna's divine pastimes or play, then listen, O heart, listen, O mind. Swarup Damodar is the best among experts in bhajan, and his very soul is the service of his Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Sagana Shri Rupayini Rasa Tattva Jnana Mani Leela Tattva Yekaila Prakasha Tahara Agraja Bhai Yahara Samana Nai Varnila Ye Yugala Vilasa. Shri Rupa and his associates revealed the sweet pastimes of Krishna as the crest jewel of the entire knowledge of rasa theory. Rupa's elder brother Sanatan, who has no equal, has described the divine couple's eternal, all blissful love affair. Sei sab mahajane spashta prema vigyapane smaranama tumi nirantara Bhakti vinoderanati mahajana ganaprati vigyapita karaha satvara. Offer your respects and constantly remember all such great souls who revealed this love so clearly. Bhaktivinoda respectfully asks all these great souls to quickly grant him attainment of all they have described. So in this way, in 4 verses, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur summarizes his teachings that he has given in the Bhajan Darpan commentary of for the 3rd verse of Manasiksha. Okay, so we do have another 2 minutes time. If there are any final comments, questions, before we wind up for the week, wind up for the day and week. So I'll just wait for a few seconds to see if there are any quick final comments before we wind up. Okay, so thank you all very much. Okay, something in the chat box. Okay, let's just thank you very much. Okay, so thank you all very much. So we will end today's discussion, and next week we will start with discussing commentary by Srila Shivaram Swami Maharaj, and then subsequently we will continue with the other commentaries as well. So Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Srila Raghunath Das Goswami Pad ki jai, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai, and Shri Manasiksha ki jai. Hare Krishna. Thank you all very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.